All right, it's another edition of the online dinner party. Yours truly, Mark Lee, is here. And of course, we're going to have an amazing conversation with amazing guests and all in that space. And we're looking forward to seeing what folks are up to on this particular day. We do know that air in Durham, North Carolina is definitely a little bit on the toasty side. It is the early part of April, actually the fifth day of April. And I know some folks are concerned about tax season since that's only less than a week and a half away if you're going for that April 15th deadline and all in that space. But a lot of folks are paying attention to that, but they're also paying attention to this great weather that we're having. Like I said, it's probably about 80 degrees on the outside here in Durham, North Carolina. We're going to find out where the weather is like in the part of the world that Simona and Rebecca are in as well. And definitely great to have some amazing guests that can share their insights on life and what they've got going on in their world. So always glad to have amazing guests and amazing conversations in the world of everything from activism to life coaching to entertainment to a number of other things that are there as well. Simona doesn't know this, but I have known a couple of sopranos in the world. Definitely, we have a very good music culture here in Durham, North Carolina. Nina Freelon is from here. Branford Marcellus is living here at the time. And there have even been some folks that have participated in our symphony, which I was on the board of, and all along those lines. So definitely was on the board sometimes back of the symphony, as well as the Mallarmé Chamber Orchestra, even though I'm not currently serving on any of those boards at the moment. But who knows? Maybe they'll bring me back at some point or another. So I definitely have a love of music, have always had a love of music and all in that space. So definitely glad to have Simona come on and share some of the ways that she got involved in this space and all along those lines. I'm going to find out if she has heard of Miss Blake Hill, because that is actually a family friend. And of course, they are involved in the soprano world as well. And they have also done some work in the space of trying to start a library dedicated to their, I believe that was their grandfather and great grandfather, who was definitely a part of the Black Wall Street here in the area. But I do know that Miss Blake Hill, who lives out in California, has definitely made some marks in the whole notion of the field of classical music and all in that space. And of course, I have some other friends, including a young lady that is involved in the world of cello playing and all in that space. So definitely it is a music that I have a great admiration for and all along those lines. So glad to have you here, Simona. Glad to have you as part of the dinner party on this particular day. And I know that you are a mezzo soprano and a classical singing teacher as well. So for those that are not familiar with you, I'm hoping that people will learn more about you and your background as a musician. So for those that are watching from around the world and are like, who is this Simona lady? And how has she gotten involved in classical music and all in that space? Were you born singing? Is there a family of singers? How did you get into this lovely field?
Hi. S- First of all, thank you for having me tonight. I mean, night for me, a bit early for you. Really happy to be here with you. Um, I was born into a family of no, they were doing anything but music, and I was singing since I was a small child. My mother told me once that I gave my first concert at the City Zoo in Switzerland, in Bern. I was singing All My Little Ducklings to this audience of people and ducks, and that was my first public appearance. So I go back a long way.
Sounds like it goes a long way. I'm thinking the Ducks might have been enjoying the music and even sitting there going like, she is singing to us. This is a wonderful thing to have a human singing to us instead of us singing to the humans, because we do know that oftentimes we listen to the sounds of nature, the sounds of the birds and the sounds of a lot of the other animals that are rustling around. So I know that we are oftentimes given a nature concert as well. So I'm a big fan of that nature
Me
concert.
too. Me too. Biggest fan of that. My favorite music.
Yes, there's definitely some great music that just hearing those
Yeah.
sounds of the birds and all in that space. So when did you decide that you wanted to become a mezzo soprano, since apparently it was not something that your family was like pushing you to go into? Maybe they wanted you to be a housewife, or maybe they want you to be a doctor or a nurse or some other field that was in the family line and everything. So when did you decide that you were going to go counter to that and become involved in the music space professionally?
Quite late, actually. I always knew that I wanted to like learn to sing, and it was classical singing for me. That was clear. That was what I really loved. Um, but I started really late. I had my first singing lesson. Imagine that, when I was 25, and that is the age where others start performing on stage, or even earlier than that. And that's when I went to my first singing lesson. So I started really, really late, and I still made it to a full profession. I've sung in opera a bit, but that was never really my element. My element has always been concert. Concert and anything from big concert to piano recital, chamber music. But I do love opera, always have loved opera, and my technique is totally operatic. I come from the Italian, from the bel canto technique. That's what I learned, and that's what I apply to all my singing. That's what I teach, because it's a way of singing that's really gentle on your voice. It doesn't take any toll at all, which is sometimes you see singers get exhausted, really strain their voices, and this is a way of singing that lets you sing into God knows old age, because it's so gentle, it functions so well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know that as part of your logo, you have, we mentioned the love of animals, the caterpillar and the butterfly as part of your logo. So, what are these animals and what significance are they to you? I know that I have friends that will say that the otter and maybe some other animals might be my totem animal. And I know that my dad is a big fan of turtles. So, some people may say that that is his totem animal. So, I am one of those people that believe that we have each animals that we resonate with and all in that space. But I was just wondering your thoughts around that, and maybe even the significance of the caterpillar and the butterfly to your own logo.
I agree. We definitely do. We do resonate. We have animals that are like closer to us, to the way to our personal setup. My caterpillar and butterfly represent the development of every single person from. I call it a little bit of. I'm a bit maybe, I don't know, a bit drastic there, but from the enslavement of the way we're brought up, and we are prisoners of our minds and of what the minds have come to accept from our upbringing, from our culture, family, school, church, community, call it, all of that together. And the butterfly is the moment when you you free yourself of all of that, and you get into the space of the soul, I call it. So for me, the caterpillar is the mind and the butterfly is the soul. And I want every human being to make that shift, to shift their perspective from the mind to the soul.
That makes a lot of sense. How important do you think, and I'm going to bring up our other guests because they're also in the creative space very shortly, but how important do you think music is to the development of the mind and the development of the human soul and even the human identity? So I know a lot of folks will say that music is something that can soothe any kind of conflict. I know that a lot of times people will say that if they go to a concert, they are admiring the musician and they could care less the person's political affiliations, orientation affiliations, gender, or a number of the other dividing factors that exist in society. So it does seem to be a unifying factor in a lot of ways. But what is your take on the importance of music to society?
It definitely is a unifying factor. It also is a language. I'm very much into languages. I speak a few, and I'm all about communication. And I think that music is the most powerful language there is. You can really make music and be very close to people that don't speak a single word you would understand, and but music will bring you together for sure. I'm absolutely convinced of that. Music is not only soothing, music is something that is healing also. And I go as far as saying that it heals you, like it heals your body, it heals you also in a physical way. We know that our cells do resonate with a lot of the stuff that happens, the vibrations that happen in the music. And if the music is played in a certain way, is played really, really well, and the frequencies are really harmonious and all of that, we know now for a fact that it actually strengthens our immune system, because the way our cells, each one of our cells, resonate with those vibrations and feel soothed, feel they get this wholesome kind of sense that all's well. It's incredible how calming this can be. It's definitely healing.
No
Absolutely.
doubt. No doubt about that. Want to bring in Rebecca. She is a author and also involved in the space of being a speaker as well. So definitely, how important has creativity been in your journey? And if you want to share a little bit about who Rebecca Chandler is, I'm sure that folks would be interested in that as well. So I was having various people come by the dinner party and share their truth and their story as well. So definitely glad to have you here, Rebecca. And if you'll share a little bit about some of the things that you've got going on, because I know you are very active and very much involved in that writing space, which is another way that we can oftentimes express ourselves.
Yeah, thank you. It's so wonderful to listen to both of you talking about music. I am not musically inclined, but I love music, and I've spent 30 years in film and TV and marketing, and using music to reach out to people in different cultures. I lived in Africa, I lived in the Middle East and Asia, and music was always a unifying source, no matter what project I was working on. So I love hearing you talk about the power of music, and the fact that you're so gifted with your voice is fantastic, because I sing to myself in the car. That's about it. So
that's very good. Good thing to do. Very good thing to do.
But yeah.
Rebecca, we were talking earlier about the music that is around us, and I do pay attention to Mother Nature. I did notice some robins that were around here in Durham, North Carolina. Definitely have seen, not recently, but in years past, rabbits and a number of other animals. So I was just wondering, in your own creative process, how important has it been for you to connect to Mother Nature and to the beauty of the nature around us, whether that is the music, because not just the birds, but also the crickets and a number of other animals are regularly giving us their own version of concerts. Sometimes we don't always want the concert because it might be in the middle of the night and we might be trying to get that sleep and everything, but they do give us those concerts on a regular basis.
I think it's critical and to ground yourself every day. So every single day I'm barefoot outside every day. And I think that just that stillness that you can create for yourself, so you can pay attention to. I live in San Diego. I'm surrounded by birds right now. Everyone's figuring out that it's spring. We've had so much rain. Everyone's happy. But just that orchestra between the breeze and the birds and some errant squirrels popping around and stuff. I think it's important to remember that you're surrounded by an orchestra that's quite beautiful every day. And if you can find 5 minutes to turn your phone off, turn the TV off, and just sit and be part of the symphony, not sitting outside of it so much, but sit in it and just listen to it, it's gorgeous. And it clears my mind and I feel better. And, I think being barefoot is definitely important. Take your shoes off, take your socks off, get out there, stick your feet in the mud or whatever you've got, and just become part of that energetic flow that is happening with or without you. And you might as well become part of it, because because certainly your entire physical and mental self is attuned to it, and it wants to be part of it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And along those same lines, I don't know if y'all noticed this, and a lot of people are saying that we are definitely getting out of the pandemic, even though most people are saying that the virus will be around and will be around for the duration of decades, if not centuries and everything. But we have learned how to deal with it, and it isn't at that full pandemic state, even though they say that others may come around. But one of the things that I observed was I think that the animals were really enjoying our solitude and us being in the trappings of our homes or the confines of whatever we were kept in for about a year or a year and a half. Because one of the things that I observed here in North Carolina was that a number of animals, and I think there were even reports of animals that weren't always seen coming in environments because, the humans were kind of locked up and kind of like staying away from the fray. So I do know that there were incidences of even like sea animals going into Italy and other places that they used to not be at, and all the time. So they're probably a little bit upset at us now because we're now back to the hustle and bustle to some degree, even though there's a lot of hybrid work going on, but we're definitely at the hustle and bustle. So now you may not run across that errant deer the way that you used to, and all in that space. But I was just wondering, is that something that the two of you ladies observed as well over the course of the last couple of years, and how did you cope as creatives with dealing with this pandemic? Because I know some folks that even did more wood shopping, as the phrase and goes, mean that they took this time to explore their creativity and to explore their creative journey while they were staying in home, maybe learning a new skill, maybe learning how to code, maybe even creating a new song. So Simona, do we have new songs coming out from you that you've recorded over the last 2.5 years?
I'm starting now, actually. No, I haven't done during the pandemic, but it's so interesting what Rebecca was saying about the birds and all of that. So I live in the south of Spain. I live outside the city of Malaga, in the countryside. I'm in the middle of nowhere, basically. And I love that. But I have to say, we don't have enough birds here. There are not enough birds. And this is due, I believe, in part to the pollution and in part to the hunters. They still hunt. We're trying to stop it around here, see where that takes us. But when I hear birds, which is not that often, it's true. It's like it opens my heart completely. It's something that is so... it just puts you in a different reality, doesn't it? It's just, yes, I wish there were more birds. Maybe it's also because there are not enough insects either, so the birds would know what to eat and they'd probably go somewhere else. At the moment, we have a lot of bees because everything is blooming. Hopefully, I would love to have millions of birds around and more insects and all of that. I'm very aware of how nature kind of took a deep breath and said, like, let's relax a little bit when we stayed, trapped. Personally, I was not trapped because living in the country, I was able to be outside all the time. I was able to be in the sun, in the fresh air. People here in cities, as everywhere else, were like held in their apartments and couldn't go out. It's different. I don't know. I think that pause for me, it was not songs which came out. For me, it was more deepening of what I want to get out there. It's more of a deepening of my message, not in form of songs, but my voice, as in what I want to bring out there. And I'm loving where this conversation is going with you two talking about nature, because this is, I think, the thing that's closest to my heart. It's even bigger than music. It's bigger than anything else. And I'm even creating a community that's called Keepers of Mother Earth. So I'm just in the best possible company here tonight. What about you, Rebecca?
COVID really threw me for a loop. I was living in Singapore. I'd been abroad for quite some time, and then I really had to come back to America because it was so unpredictable. I had to shut down my business and come back to States and learn how to be an American again, something I was not eager to do. So I struggled quite a bit in the isolation and COVID-ness of all of it. It was quite difficult for me. And then just trying to get my feet under me again. It was a very complicated time. And then last year, I decided to finish my memoir, my book, which is a story about early childhood trauma and healing from it. And I think the COVID shutdown and all that was happening around it, it gave me a little bit of space just to think about what was important to me and what did I want to come out of COVID, the whole COVID system with. And I kind of decided that I wanted to be clear and I wanted to get some really substantial healing behind me. So while I was finishing my memoir, I was also going back through a somatic process to kind of complete a particular part of my healing journey. And so the net result was that I published 2 books, not one. And and so, yeah, I think COVID, I think the isolation of COVID was something that I didn't understand or expect. And then I'm single, I don't have any children. So being back in a country I didn't totally understand and then being isolated on top of it, I think it was really interesting. And I made a point of trying to get out every day to walk as much as you were allowed to, and just try to connect, because even if things felt upside down and crazy like they did quite often, there's that resonance of, getting my feet on the ground and being like, just trying to tether myself to the earth as much as possible, because everything else felt so completely out of control for quite some time. So, yeah, that's how I spent my COVID shutdown.
No, that makes sense. Along those same lines, and I was just curious because a lot of times the questions go according to what the guests are saying and everything. How much is identity? Because we do have heard a lot of identity politics going on, been what has shaped you even in your own mental health journey and creative journey, and all along those lines. Because I do know that you just said that it took you a while to get back into the feel of being an American after having been an expatriate and having traveled. And it definitely sounds like Simona is multilingual and has probably done a lot of traveling herself. And I do know that sometimes if folks are upset at certain people, the automatic pushback is, America, love it or leave it. France, love it or leave it. Whether you can throw any country in there. It's kind of that nationalistic view and everything that is too often thrown out at people. Whereas I'm one of those people that believes that we can study and identify with our culture, but also relate and learn from other cultures as well. But I'm just wondering what y'all's ladies' take on this was, because I've seen a lot of nationalism throughout the world and everything, and definitely a lot of identity politics. But I'm just wondering what y'all's thoughts are around that and how y'all have coped with it, if you've had to cope with it at all.
Oh, I mean, I don't know, Simona, what your experience has been. When I came back to States, I came back in 2020, and it was a very tumultuous political cycle that I won't dive into. I think that anyone who has the opportunity to get outside of their home country and go discover another culture, you're just always better for it. Mm-hmm. And I think that the challenge with Americans in particular is America is a very big country, mm-hmm. and has a lot going for it inside of its borders, right? In terms of culture, food, scenery. And so when you try to convince Americans to leave their state and to fly for 10 hours or whatever and go somewhere else, we're not really equipped to do that well. We're not taught second languages, not really. It's kind of a joke in the education system. And we're not really taught to embrace other cultures. I don't know about other countries, but certainly in America, it feels like we're taught to fear and not try to understand other cultures and communities. Not even, just communities inside America are misunderstood. So if I could, I would mandate that every single American had to get a passport and they had to travel every 5 years. So I just think that, having lived in Kenya and Egypt and Dubai and Singapore and been to over 100 countries, I can tell you that I'm much better as a human because I've sat and had tea and had a meal with people who I did not understand, who no one spoke my language, but we all could connect through food and music and art and all those other things. So, Simona, I don't know what your experience has been, but
I agree 100%. In Europe, it's a little bit easier to be exposed to different cultures, because you travel like 6 hours, 7 hours. I'm not talking about flying. I'm talking like on a train, say, and you are already where they speak a different language, where it's a different government, it's different culture altogether, different food. Everything is really, really different. So it is a bit easier. We don't have these huge distances within the same culture. That's one thing. For me personally, I was born into bilingual family. My father was from southern Italy, from Naples. My mother was Swiss, from the German part of Switzerland. So my mother tongues are actually Italian and German, and that's how I grew up. And as the Swiss do, when I was 7, I started learning French. So by age 12, I was trilingual, because you don't kind of learn it like, a little bit of like that in school, a few lessons. You learn it with a mother tongue teacher, and you really, really learn it. So that's what happened. Then I learned English later. When I was 14, I started. Do you know how I learned English? Listening to Elvis. I discovered Elvis, and I wanted to know what these songs meant. So I started translating, learning everything, learning the words, and that's how I did it.
But you also built that muscle, right? That language muscle that everyone's born with. Americans don't build it. Whereas people in Europe and like in Africa, everyone in Kenya speaks at least 3 languages.
Yeah.
Their tribal tongue, Swahili, and a bit of English. And then they'll go on to build with other languages. But I think it's a muscle that we don't build.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know how to flex it as well as you do.
First of all, that's right. And there's another thing as well. When you are born, like, or even not born, but say when you learn another language as a small kid, basically you have a second area of your brain that's dedicated to language, not just one that's dedicated to yours. You have a second one. And your brain kind of accepts that, okay, there's space for more of these systems. When you're born into one language, your brain has that system and tries to adapt other languages to that. That's why people have heavy accents, because they try to mold that to what they have in their language area. When you start out in life having more language areas, once you have 2, you might as well have 7 or whatever, because there's space for more than one. So this obviously helps a lot. But not everyone is like.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely can agree with that. And hearing what y'all are saying is very important. And I know even on the network Pod TV, there's been a lot of conversation about how we can better our education system. So I know that Nick and Kim are very big on physical literacy, but they're also big on the study and the use of creative arts to develop critical thinking and all in that space. And my younger brother has actually been working with a lot of what are called at-risk youth and all in that space, even though I don't always like that term. And because I think it kind of limits what folks are allowed to do and all in that space, and kind of puts them in a bubble that they probably don't need to be in. And I think my brother Malik would agree with me in that space. But we have seen mental health being a very important issue. A lot of people were paying attention to their mental health during even this pandemic, and we're trying to find ways to be healthy physically, but also mentally as well. So, Rebecca, I know that that's part of what your journey has been in, is the importance of mental health on that daily grind. So how important has that been, and what are ways that you try to exercise that mental health muscle as well? Because I do think that a lot of times we neglect all of the aspects of who we are. And in my mind, I think that there are 4 core components of everybody: our physical health, which I could do a much better job of exercising and all in that space; our emotional health, which I think I do a pretty good job of; our mental health, which I think I would do a pretty good job of; and some people would say our spiritual health. I don't like to say our religious health, because I think spirituality and religion are 2 different things, kind of what Simona was talking about with her program, and I definitely want to learn more about that. But what is your thoughts around how we are doing in terms of addressing mental health?
Well, as a result of my childhood trauma, I developed a multiple personality disorder, which is called dissociative identity disorder. And I also had complex PTSD and all the bells and whistles that come along with all of that. So my mental health has always, since the age of 5, has been extraordinarily complicated to manage, identify, and to find help to heal. When I started therapy when I was 20, trauma was not a common conversation. And certainly the book, The Body Keeps the Score, all the things that have come out since then that help people understand trauma and how it affects the body and the mind, that's all a new conversation. So I would say early in my healing journey, there weren't many resources. Talk therapy was the resource. And talk therapy, I think, is helpful, but it's very event-based. You talk about things in talk therapy. I don't think you necessarily talk through them, if that makes sense. So you're not really healing, but you're talking a lot, which I think is helpful. And as with a lot of people back in the day, when trauma wasn't understood as well as it is today, I was diagnosed as bipolar. So I had lots of labels thrown at me over the years and my mental health, but didn't get a lot of permanent healing, is what I'd like to describe, until I entered in the somatic journey. And the somatic space is really what shifted my entire mental health journey, because it first addresses the trauma in your flesh and how that was received and how it was processed by your mind and what your mind did with it. And in my case, my mind dissociated greatly beyond what normal people go through. So I think mental health, what I've learned over the years is that I no longer have multiple personality disorder, by the way. I've got some really profound healing in the past couple of years. And I've resolved those alters. But I think for me, what's still a challenge when it comes to mental health is the stigma around it.
Mm-hmm.
And that people are still, particularly in some specific communities, it's really not easily spoken about. I think some traumas aren't easy to discuss. And I think that people maybe don't understand that therapy is the one environment that if you have trauma you want to discuss, you control the narrative. You're actually in control, maybe for the first time ever in your life, because you get to decide how little or how much you actually are going to share from session to session. And I think that I wish that there was a lot more conversation around how you are in control with your therapy. When you go into therapy, you set the timeline, you set how the conversation works. And I wish there was just more resources, more of everything, so that people were as passionate about their mental health as they are about going to the gym.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and we definitely have to be passionate about our mental health as well. But one of the things that I'm concerned about, I don't know what your thoughts are, maybe even Simona has some thoughts as well on this, is that too often there's a lot of pigeonholing that goes on. I know that there was a recent Netflix special that featured Monique, and she talked about, that's the comedian Monique, and
Yes.
she talked about the being placed in special ed classes and things along those lines. So she was pigeonholed in that sense as a very young person. And I do know that there are a number of kids that in my mind are probably just hyperactive, because I don't know a kid yet that hasn't been hyperactive. And sometimes it is a quickness to judgment and a quickness to put them on Ritalin. I'm not saying that Ritalin isn't needed and other medications aren't needed from time to time, but there does seem to be a rush to judgment in certain senses and a rush to put folks on medication when there are probably other ways to control that hyperness that kids, I just naturally think, have. And like you, I don't have any kids, but I do have my two nephews. So I know when they're playing the soccer match, they're quite hyper about that soccer match or their flag football game or a number of other things that they are involved in at the age of 13 and 14. But I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts about that.
I mean, Americans, we like to throw pills at things and not look for solutions and not look for the actual source of the problem. I think the kids that are called hyper, or the kids, all these labels that get tossed around, it's interesting to me to watch adults label kids and not for a second think about what that label does. And those same adults spend their entire adult life trying to break free of their own labels. It's very strange to me. So I don't know what it's like in Europe. I think it's a little bit different, but certainly, school systems are incentivized to prescribe medications to children. They get kickbacks and they get financing the more that more kids sign up for Ritalin. So there's systems like that in place. And I think as a parent, it must be very complicated to fight it, because you're going against a system that doesn't really want to look at the source of what's going on, the diet in the house for the hyper kid. How much sugar are they ingesting every day? And are they getting enough sleep? And all that stuff. I mean, Simona, what is it? I don't know how you feel about that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I am absolutely not a fan of drugs and stuff, and none of that. In Italy, I don't know really how it is now, but in Italy, when I was a kid, we didn't have the Ritalin thing, none of that. But I knew it from the other side. I knew it from Switzerland. In Switzerland, they stuff kids full with that stuff, with that drugs. It's usually Ritalin. I don't understand that. Me too. I would look at their diet. I would look at their sleep. I would look at their emotional wellness in the house and all of that. The fact of throwing all these labels at people is I think really, really detrimental. And you're talking about earlier, even when it comes to travel and to your cultural identity, the very term identity is something that creates so much havoc, if you ask me. Because identity is God, it's something that is so important to everyone when it shouldn't be, because identity is the playground of the mind. I am, don't know, that nationality, that profession, that whatever, it goes from food preferences to sexual preferences to politics to anything. I am bipolar, or I am whatever. You are, yeah, and then what else? You are none of that, actually. You are your essence. That's where I come back through to the mind and the soul. What I'm interested in knowing is, what's a soul? I don't really care what your identity is. You can change that. You can change your name. You can change your gender. You can change your political views. You can change anything you want. Your nationality, your religion. You can change anything. That's just outer layers that you can peel off like an onion. And everyone concentrates on them. And I identify as this and that nationality, and I have a passport, so I'm allowed to go. You're an earthling. I don't need to know more, okay? You belong to this planet. Okay. What are you here for? What did you come here for? What does your soul want? That's all that matters. And all that stuff only creates misery. That's all it creates. And we concentrate on the outer layers. We concentrate on that stuff that could be thrown away, that could be changed, that could be that or something else, or it doesn't matter anyway. But what does never change is your soul. And when you were talking about, I love that, because that's what I talk about too, your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health. And then you hesitated on the spiritual health. There is no spiritual health. Your soul cannot be healthy or unhealthy. Your soul is it's obviously healthy. It's just that's all it can do. It's just pure love. It's just pure intelligence. It's just pure, and all the rest can be in good or bad health. Sure, your emotions, your mental health, your physical health, everything. But your soul does not get ill, sick, none of that.
No, I guess part of the reason of the hesitation, and I'd love to hear both of y'all's thoughts about that, is I differentiate between spirituality and religion, because I think
yes, please don't put them together.
Is a different conversation, because I think that is definitely your soul and where your soul is, and hopefully you are having a very positive soul journey and all that, even though we know there are folks that have negative soul journeys in that space. But definitely wishing that everybody is living that positive life in their soul journey. But I do find that in my mind, and I've had this conversation with a number of folks on this podcast and the other podcasts that I've been part of, I think that a lot of folks get caught up in the division factors within spirituality. And I'm not saying I've read all the books. I've not even read as much as I probably should. But when I've looked at things like the Bible or the Quran or Hindu writings or Buddhist writings or a number of other writings, the core message is the same, which is love thy neighbor, love thyself, love Mother Nature, love a number of other core principles. But I think that we get caught up in the politics of division, even in the church, and also get caught up in the cult of personalities that can exist in a number of churches. And I don't think it's just the Christian thing. I think it's a number of religions that get caught up in the cult of personality and who's got what, because there is some of that materialistic aspect that goes on in our organized religion as well. But I'm just wondering, is that one of the mistakes that you think we as a society are making, is getting too caught up in the religious narrative and not enough in the spiritual narrative?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, religion and spirituality don't have a lot to do with each other. They can overlap. They will. There is some truth and some great, beautiful, real talk, probably in all religions on the planet, but most of it, no, it doesn't come from spirituality. It comes from politics, as you say.
Yeah.
I think it's packaging, isn't it? I see religion by and large as packaging. Having worked in marketing for a long time, and I have my own version of religion that I choose, and I enjoy it. It doesn't subscribe to any particular narrative or any, and I see it now as I get older. I see religion kind of clutching on the edges now, because basically religion is designed to control people.
Yes.
And to get money.
Yes.
And so how do you generate wealth? Well, as a business, and religion's business, you have to have an audience. And how do you get the audience? You scare the death out of them. Exactly. And you create this place that's evil that you're going to go to when you die, because everyone's going to die, by the way. Mm-hmm. So everyone, regardless of what you believe in, you're all going to go to this really scary, horrible place when you die, unless you subscribe to the package that we're selling and you give us X percentage of your pay and you follow our rules. And if you do all of that, then when you die, you'll have this other nice experience, and we're going to terrify you to the point of selling you this fire insurance. So I just think I'm spiritual and I'm religious in my own way that works for me. I meditate every morning, and it starts as a prayer and it ends as a prayer, but in the middle of it, it's whatever I choose it to be, right? So I think that everyone, and I just think that I don't have any feelings about if you're a Muslim or a Catholic or a Protestant. Good for you. I'm happy for you. And if it soothes you, I'm really happy for you. But I'm quite clear for me that it's packaging and it's fear-based. And I just don't think that subscribes to any real element of genuine love that I need to know about.
Absolutely. I agree. I couldn't agree more. And fear, who is in fear? The mind. It's not the soul. The soul knows no fear. The mind is easily manipulated through fear. So how is this meant to be spiritual? You are using some low tricks to control the minds of the scared, so they can't even hear their own souls, who would know that.
And there's a lot of absolutes as well, because I know that sometimes some of the ones that are more devout in their belief will give you these absolute statements. And I'm not saying that there are not rules that are in the various religious books and everything, and most of those rules are universal rules. I think that most of the things that are in the 10 Commandments, most people can get with. You're not trying to covet the property of a neighbor or things along those lines. You're definitely not trying to murder or rob. And I know that those are some of the basic commandments and even commandments against gluttony and some of the other things that are there. But there are some folks that will give you those as absolutes. And I don't know that they were necessarily set up as absolutes. And I do know that the world changes, society changes, and there can be some core values within those absolutes, but there are some folks that will give you those as, you have to do totally abide by those rules or you won't make it on the journey to the promised land, whatever that promised land might be.
I just think it's weird that the polytheists that existed before monotheism took over, so the polytheists, more than one god, lots of gods, lots of temples all over the land, and they had, by and large, all the rules that we're talking about. Don't kill people, don't hurt people, be nice to each other. Essentially it, right? Just be kind and be good. Right. Then monotheism rolled in and they borrowed, 90% of their doctrine from the polytheists, but they just, took it into a funnel and said, not lots, just one God. Okay, fine, one God, sure. If that, I don't even know how you would do that. But we're going to take all these things over, like Easter. This Easter celebration is a pagan celebration. We're going to take it. We're going to call it this. We're going to do all these things to it. Cool, whatever. I mean, it's all packaging to me, right? But it's just interesting to me that when people start getting really stuck in their doctrine, that they don't really do their homework, they don't really research it, and then because I think institutions know that people aren't going to do their research and they're not going to do their reading, they can start to build the boxes that they want you to live in, so that you start to believe this one particular construct so that they can, that they can have a successful business. So I just think what's interesting now is the shift out of mainstream religion into, I think, more mindfulness is what I keep reading. And like generations now, let's say Gen Z and Gen Alpha behind them, they're not particularly interested in a strict doctrine, a religion, let's say. They're much more interested in feeling good. Right. And I think in North America anyway, I don't know that you can convince a lot of people right now that the religious institutions that are in this country right now are delivering on their promise. I know that they do. They do a lot of good work, and I'm not trying to discount that. But I think a lot of these kids coming out of school shootings and bank failures and college, all this stuff that's happening right now, they're looking at that and saying, well, if that's what happens when you sit inside your version of religion, I don't want to be a part of it. I think that's
definitely that going on, but there's also the concern that too often when people are going through those troubled times, they are given lip service and they're not actually given action. Because I know that friends of mine have been in the space of being homeless or near homeless, and they have definitely made appeals to their church, not even their church family, but churches nearby and all of that, and have basically either been given a small token amount or even in some cases totally ignored. I know that my dad, who is a artist by latter career, because we all go through multiple careers. He was a teacher, an activist, and a number of other things, but his latest career that he's had for a number of years has been an artist, and he did a piece called Thought and Prayers, and he is not religious by any means of the word and everything. As a matter of fact, at some points in his life, he might have even been considered agnostic or atheist, even though I do think he has a spiritual base that is stronger now than it might have been at the time that he was using those labels, even though he still jokes about those labels even to this day and everything. But I know that part of Thoughts and Prayers is what I just described. It's done as a protest, so it's like that fire alarm thing that you pull, and in it is the note Thoughts and Prayers, because what he was saying is that too often we give thoughts and prayers without an action behind that thoughts and prayers. So I mean, a lot of times people, if they're hungry and they've been having destruction from a tornado or whatever, fires like y'all have had in California, they appreciate the thoughts and prayers, but they sometimes need a concrete action behind those thoughts and prayers. Is kind of the message of that particular art piece.
Yeah, I just, it has to be relevant to me if you want me to pay attention to it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And
You
speaking of
know,
relevant, I know that one of the other things that has been very interesting, and I know that definitely you have talked about it in some of your work and everything. Definitely, I've heard that from you, Simona, is women empowerment, and there is definitely, and y'all are two amazing ladies, and there are some folks that will say that um, women don't need strong role models. I've even had friends of mine that have told me that they just want the person to be a success for success sake and all of that. But I'm like, no, there are women in engineering that probably need to see other women in engineering. There are African Americans in fields that are not strongly African American that need to see role models in that field. But I have gotten some pushback by that because there are some people that are like, no, I just need to see strong role models. I don't need to see necessarily a woman strong role model and everything. So they've even pushed back on, say, our current Supreme Court judge and our current vice president. But I'm like, if to me it is good to see somebody that is like you that can empower you or encourage you to do good in that space. But that's just my take on it. But I'd love to hear from you two ladies.
I think, this is another disconnect, total disconnect. Human beings are able of amazing things, and it does absolutely not matter if they're men or women. It's two energies that are complementary. They need to be there in the same amount, in a good balance. They're equally important. They are opposite, if you will, different. It doesn't mean anything. Obviously, our history proves that one of them has been in a totally misunderstood and wounded way, I think, crushing the other one that's been there as well, surviving in a misunderstood and wounded way. But it's two energies that are equal in power and equal in everything. They're just of opposite sign, and they're two principles that are needed, and they are needed to in balance. So what we need to do now, I think we do need role models. We need whatever it takes to bring the balance back. Once the balance is back, hopefully, this will not be relevant anymore. The fact that in our times we are talking about where is this person from, what gender are they, what color are they, whatever are they, is so unnecessary. That's so much unnecessary grief, which comes from fear, from misunderstandings, from all of that. But there again, you're an earthling, you're a human being. Souls don't have gender. A soul is a soul. And then when we come here, we choose who we want to be, not what we are as a soul. Then we come here and we choose who we want to be. And then sometimes we change our minds or whatever. It's again, it's so not relevant. And we create problems around this. And you have discrimination against whatever is not, doesn't look like you. We should really, yes, let's have strong role models. Let's do whatever it takes to get that balance back.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's your take on that, Rebecca?
I don't know that we've ever had balance, so I'd like to see balance for the first time
in nature.
In my life.
Yeah. In
So,
nature, there is balance. We need to mirror that.
I think that I think that we need to see the entire spectrum of humanity in every station that there is, in whatever, in whatever career or whatever journey that people are on. We are by and large insecure beings, and we like to see people that we can relate to and learn from and aspire to. And when you get inside single systems, in America, white Caucasian men dominate certain industries. And inside those systems, there's no opportunity for women and minorities to also benefit from the system. It's just it's so is it important to have an African American Supreme Court justice? Of course it is.
Yes.
I go back to the little boy that wanted to touch President Obama's hair because he couldn't quite believe that someone with his hair was actually the president of the United States. And the moment that he got to touch the president's head, it all became real. The promise, and I don't know about other countries, don't quite, I think, have this kind of dogma, but in America, you're taught you can be anything you want to be from the moment you're born. You're literally, that's what you're taught every day as you grow up. But as you get older, you're taught that, wait a minute, that only really applies if you look and sound like X, Y, or Z. And so it's important to have those filters removed and to have people look at, the Supreme Court and the president's office or the council member's office or the local lifeguard. It's important that you can see yourself and other people and say, well, if that person did it, that means I can do it. It's of course it's important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Simona, I said I was going to get to this, and we still got about another 20 or so minutes to go and everything. But what is the Keepers of Mother Earth? And if you can share a little bit about that as well, because I'm thinking that is something that people might be interested in and want to know what the Keepers of Mother Earth are. I know that there is definitely a lot of folks that are very much in tune, as I think we started at the beginning with their connection to Mother Nature and Mother Earth. But I'm just wondering what this particular movement is.
Yeah, this is not a movement yet. I hope it will become one. For now, it's a newborn community. It's a group of 5 coaches. We are 5 life coaches from different backgrounds, from different countries, cultures, and everything. And what we all have in common is that we believe that when a person is really connected to their inner being, to what really matters, not to all the stuff that we were talking about earlier, but to what you really, really are, you understand automatically that you are also part of nature. You understand that you are at one with nature and with everyone else, because everyone else is at one with nature. And when you come to this space where you understand oneness, people talk about oneness. When you understand oneness, you would never harm nature because you wouldn't harm yourself. It does not make sense to harm nature. So what we do, our work is to help people get their own personal inner connection back. And as a beautiful side product, we have that they connect more and more with nature, because that's what a human being does when not artificially pinched off it. We're not disconnected. I talk a lot about disconnect, but because I really feel that it's all the harm that we see, whatever is we perceive as harm, as bad, as negative, is when we are not in sync with our soul. We were talking about the rules that all these big world religions give. If people were connected to their souls, there would be no need for any rule whatsoever. Because rules of what? If it's only love countering more love and love, and what rules?
Speaking of rules, and I know that it can be something that people enjoy. Definitely, like I said, I try to get out, need to get out more than I've been getting out in that space to Mother Nature. But sometimes we've also seen a lot of people that have loved the technology. There are a lot of folks that are loving playing in the technology and even exploring entire new villages in the technology. That's that whole augmented reality and metaverse conversations that go on a regular basis. So how much of that has played into what is going on in the world as well. Because I know a lot of folks, they will go to a restaurant. I might go to one later on today for actual dinner and all in that space. And I guarantee you, I'll probably see maybe an entire family that'll be on cell phones and disconnected from the folks that they are in the audience with and all in that space, which might be their best friends or their family members. So what is y'all's take on this new age of technology? Is it something that can integrate with the feeling of nature and all of that? Because I do have some friends that say that they love going to places that they could never really go to, like, you know, maybe taking a trip to Mars or Venus or Pluto, which is places that you can't necessarily go at this time, and you don't see any time in the near future, since a trip like that would be probably quite expensive. But you can create these fantasy worlds and all in that space. But what is y'all's take on that and the nature of the way things are going? Speaking of nature,
I want to hear what Rebecca thinks. For me, it is possible to integrate that.
It's interesting because I come from a film and TV and marketing background, and I actually consulted at Meta and other companies that love to, and I made material that we love to get you to watch. We love to get you hooked. And the more you watch, the more we learn about you. So I think what isn't maybe obvious to people, maybe, I don't know, is that every single time you pick up your phone and you dissociate into your phone, which is really what you're doing, you're just attaching into your phone. There are huge corporations that are thanking you every single second that you're on your phone and not paying attention, because we're learning a lot about you. And we love to learn about you so that we can make you feel like you're too fat, too thin, too short, too tall, too sick, not healthy enough, so we can sell you some stuff. So I don't know that there's no balance right now in technology. I love ChatGPT. I love AI. I love all of it. I love my phone, but I'm very aware of what's going on inside those systems. And I think what's unfortunate is that I don't think people really understand what's happening inside those systems. And there's no balance in it yet. I think it's still, even though smartphones have been around for a while, the internet has been around for a while, you think about it, it's still pretty new.
Yeah.
And they're still figuring out what they don't know and what they know. And I think that there's a reason that when you're on your phone or when you're gaming, that it, tickles your addiction center. There's a reason that it does that, right? And I think that it's a necessary evil. We're on the internet right now. We're doing this thing right now, having a conversation. What I find really sad is that I, like you, have been in restaurants all over the world, and I've seen families completely disconnected from each other, sitting across from the table from each other. I've seen entire households where mom is downstairs, child is upstairs, and they're texting each other. Whereas you used to have to come downstairs when your mother called you, right? And you had to have a face-to-face interaction, and you learned to have a face-to-face conversation and how to get through those moments. And I think that's, unfortunately, that fabric of connection is changing. And I find it to be quite shallow at times right now. And I think that it's, how do we make sure that we don't lose our depth of connection? Because this isn't going to go away. But how do we make sure that we still sit at the dinner table or whatever version of that you have and still talk to each other, and we know how to speak to each other? But technology is here, and it's going to go faster, evolve faster. You look at what ChatGPT a year ago, nobody knew about it, and now everybody's on it. So it's, how do we corral this thing and still benefit from it, but not get so lost in it? That to me is what's interesting to watch.
Yeah, no doubt. What is your take on that, Simona?
I agree. And I think that what we need to do, because obviously it's not going to stop, and actually it's going to accelerate more and more and more. And I like it too. I love it. I think it's fabulous. It's an expression of human creativity, this is great. What's not catching up is the emotional and, pass me the word, spiritual maturity. It's just, we're behind on that side. technology goes faster than the rest. So it goes faster than our evolution, as you know, as the inner work that humanity needs to do. And that's exactly what we talk about in the Keepers of Mother Earth. That's exactly what we want. When you get to that point of connection, you can take technology for what it is. You'll appreciate it, and you'll know exactly what its place is in your life. You'll make the most of it. You'll love it. You'll use it, but you won't be overwhelmed, and you won't be enslaved by it. A family sitting on their phones and not talking is because they fear they're missing out on what's going on out there, and they don't get that what's going on here in this moment is more important.
Well, what are you missing? What is it out there that you are missing? Because from what I can tell from all the data I've seen, and because of my work and everything else, it's likes.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're chasing likes, if that's ultimately your goal every day is to get likes and followers, what is it mentally? What is that? How does that nourish you? And how do we emulate that in reality so that you don't need that nourishment inside your phone or your technology? Like, to me, it's like, when did we start chasing likes and followers as a symbol of we've arrived? I've arrived. I've got 1 million followers. I've arrived. Selena Gomez has, I think, half a billion followers on Instagram now, and it's like, what does that mean? Why does that matter? You know, and I'm more curious about what it is inside a like and a follow that people have learned is a gold.
Isn't that part of what is going on with our young people, particularly? Because I know a lot of folks that are very much engaged in that space, that are in the high school and the college age, and that's really what their go-to modes of being accepted is. So they are more accepted. They have thousands of likes and thousands of followers. Sometimes the followers aren't even folks that they are actually engaging with. It's one thing to have followers that you are actually engaging with. It's almost like a modern day version of the popular kid in school and everything.
Oh, for sure.
It has totally made it that more people can be the quote unquote cool kid in school and all in that space. Whereas before, you had to be a jock, or if you were in certain nerd cultures like the chess club and things, you had your followers that you would go, but you had to be in certain cool spirits in that high school. We all saw West Side Story and a number of the other high school movies that had that kind of narrative. But now with this, everybody is able to be the cool kid. It's almost like everybody's getting a participation award, and the more they get, they are better off in their mindset. But we've also seen some horrible people that had horrible followings and tons of followings that then went off and did some of these school shootings that you were alluding to earlier. They were definitely had a following before they were revealed to be who they were, to come to Simona's standpoint of that spiritual journey and everything.
I mean, how are you right? I mean, how are you nourished?
Right.
I used to be nourished because I got a hug from my mom or my dad or whatever, right? So if I replace that nourishment with a phone when I'm 3 or an iPad when I'm 3, because it works, right? And I get why people do it. Then I learned that my nourishment comes out of a box.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I get why it happens. I just think it's really sad because there's an enormous amount of disconnect and loneliness in that. I will never understand why my niece, who's 21, actually she has thousands of followers, and she'll focus on the one negative comment from some random person somewhere in the world and not the 500 positive comments. And I can't figure out, like, well, what part of you is so unnourished that one person can ruin your whole day? What is that?
Well, that's a primeval reaction, because we are wired to see the negative in order save ourselves from it, to protect ourselves, to avoid it in the future or something like that. That's how our brains. But there again, that's the lizard brain. It's wired like that. And there again, why is all of that? It's because we are constantly only in the brains. When you say how do we get out of that, we get a bit more out of our minds, which is not as bad as it sounds, and more into our souls, where that stuff would not, those needs would not really touch us. When you say when did that start, for me, when did the likes start? For me, they started with when Homo sapiens came to the planet. Because, as you say, the cool kid and everything, this need to be recognized, to be appreciated, because not being recognized and appreciated used to mean death. You were left behind, you were expulsed. That would mean death. And our mind is scared to death of dying.
Yeah, no, and a lot of people are definitely scared of that end, even though we all know that we come onto Earth and that there is a end point, and there's the saying that what is important is that dash in between, because even though there are those of us that are trying to live a long life, hope to make it to 100 or maybe even 200, even though nobody's ever done that. But I jokingly say that I'm going to go
You
for
and
it.
I need to talk.
There's a way to
I
get
have
to 200.
no desire.
You and I need to talk.
No desire.
No desire to get to 200.
Absolutely not. I think 100 is already too much. Yeah, no.
Okay, so we got one who's going to 100. Simone is saying that 200 is possible, so we'll have to have a further conversation about how to get to 200 and all in those lines and everything. So we're going to see if that is a possibility and how that is a possibility, because apparently there are ways to get to 200. But like I said, even if you make it 200, there's still a end at the end, and definitely there are some folks that will say that you are going to go on a return trip, and some that will say that it is going on to the next plane, whether that is what some people deem as heaven or whatever that next plane may be. And there are other folks that are like, nope, that's it, you're done, that's the end of the chapter, and we'll move on to whatever the next part of your being is, and all in that space. So we'll have to continue that conversation on another show, because I do know that there's some interesting conversations around that line and all in that space. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I hope y'all have as well. But as we get ready to wind down, one of the things that I was curious about, and I love to give all the folks their opportunity to shine in the last 10 minutes or so, is any final thoughts that you have. I do know that I love to have positivity on all of my shows and try to give a message of positivity and hope from my guests to the rest of the audience. So if there is a message of positivity or hope that you would like to share, definitely would love to hear that. And I'm sure that folks would love to have a opportunity to be further engaged in conversation with you. So if there are social media outlets that you are available to share, I'm sure that folks would love to hear that as well. So as we wind down, definitely I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you'll come back. I did see that Mr. Blanchard had popped in, didn't get a chance to get to him on this one, but I'll reschedule him for a later one and all in that space. But definitely any messages that you would like to share with the audience, I'm sure that folks would be quite interested in hearing those thoughts. So I'll start with you, Simona, since I started off with you, and then we'll go to Rebecca afterwards.
I have a big message of positivity. That's what I do, and it's not, it doesn't come for me from like positive thinking. All's fine, focus on what's nice and that kind of stuff, and it's all gonna be fine, and you have to think positive. No, I mean, yes, do think positive. It's a good thing, but for me, it comes from it's not a belief. It's a knowing. I'd be happy to talk to you some other time about these things, because I've had a few insights into what else there is. There's more than what we see. And I keep talking about the soul like a broken record, because I believe that's really what matters. That's really what we are. And what our souls do is only positive. 99.9% of the cases. Every human being who will be listening to that has a potential that's so way beyond what they even imagine, what they even fantasize about, or it's just it's beyond. And I believe that, I know it's hard because we've been used to do things the other way, but finding that connection and living from that space is possible. I believe that humanity can do it before we wipe ourselves out. So my message is really, really positive. I believe in that.
Appreciate that and everything. What about you, Rebecca? And also Simona, before you get out of here, if you'll tell folks how they can reach you as well, in case folks are interested and want to continue the conversation. And I do hope to get both of you back on a future edition of both this show, the Online Dinner Party, as well as the radio show with Mark Lee. And I hope that you have enjoyed the conversation as much as I've enjoyed conducting it and all in that space.
I think, first of all, I've had a great time. Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. People can find me at RebeccaEChandler.com. I like to just remind people that there's good around you. It might not necessarily always feel or sound like it, but there's good around you. Chances are you've got some decent neighbors. You've got good friends. The guy at the post office is pretty nice. There's good around you. And I think that it's really easy to get caught up in the news cycle and political cycles and stuff that would like to convince you that things are a lot more horrible than maybe I think they actually are. It doesn't mean things aren't challenging and things aren't complicated, but there's a lot of good around if you walk outside in your bare feet, hopefully, and just take a look around. And there's a teacher, there's a friend, there's someone at the barbershop, there's someone who's a light. And if you need to hang on to that light more than usual, then hang on to them. It's all right. Because I find that people who offer a lot of light, they like to help. So look around you and find someone with a lot of light, and don't be shy. Tell them that you need a little bit of help. Tell them you're struggling, and you'll find people. And I think that there's a lot of positive stuff going on. Put the headlines down. Try to put your phone down, and try just to look around you and see the good that's going on. And maybe it's a city council that decided to beautify your town with some potted plants. Or just there's people out there doing good every day. And I think that one of the ways to feel good and to feel like you're a positive part of what's going on is to volunteer. And maybe that's at the library or a food pantry or walking dogs for seniors, whatever it is. You'd be surprised what's out there. Just Google, how do I volunteer near me? I guarantee you there'll be 8 million results about how you can volunteer and become part of something that's not about your own life, and you'll feel good. People need help, so you're going to feel good about helping out. And yeah, I think disconnect a little bit from the rhetoric and the chatter that's going on, and just remember that I've been around the world several times over, and I've always found great people. And in my own country, in my own neighborhood, as messed up as some stuff is, people are just good. Yeah. And people want to help, and people are kind. And I think don't forget that. Don't get lost in the sauce of all this nonsense. And just remember that people by and large are good.
Yes, I appreciate that. Definitely agree with that. Simona, as we're getting ready to head out the door and everything, if you tell folks how they can reach you. And like I said, I definitely hope that we will continue these conversations and have more of them in the very near future. Definitely hope that I can get both of you back on other shows, maybe even next week's Online Dinner Party and all in some of the other shows. But if you can tell folks how they can reach you, and hopefully we can get you back on some future editions as well.
Well, I'm lucky I have a funny name. So Simona Mango like the fruit. If you put me in Google, I'll come up because the name is too funny. But you can find me on Instagram. It's Simona_Life Purpose Mentor, and there you find me. But there as well, put in my name and I'll come up. tropical fruit.
Sounds good, and definitely looking forward to having further conversations with the both of you. We're going to go out with actually a vegan commercial because it's a friend of mine that sells some vegan product and all of that. But we're going to get out of here with this particular commercial, and I hope to see both of you back in the very near future. And we'll continue this dialogue about some of the things that we talked about, and even some of the other things that we didn't get to, including life coaching and all in that space. So definitely great to have both of you here, and hope that more people will reach out to you and learn more about the great works that you are both doing, and hope to see you back in the very near future.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Simona.
Mark. Thank you, Rebecca. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, my name is Maria Jones, baker and owner of Very Vegan, a premier mobile bakery specializing in putting a plant-based spin on some of your favorite desserts. Inspired by my own personal experience with my journey with healthier eating habits, I was determined to make comparable items with desirable textures and great taste. We're always experimenting with different flavor profiles and expanding our menu. I enjoy my creative license as well as imparting ideas and requests from my customers. It makes for new and exciting items. Some of our customer faves are the specialty cheesecakes such as the banana pudding with homemade vegan vanilla wafers, strawberry crunch, honey bun, fruity pebbles, peach cobbler, and many others. We also offer moist, rich cupcakes, delectable cookies, decadent brownies, and scrumptious pound cake. Discover how amazingly delicious vegan can be. I am available for orders, or you can purchase my items exclusively at the Black Farmers Hub.